Elevators are designed to be safe, efficient, and convenient, yet when they fail, the consequences can be unimaginably gruesome. From sudden drops to crushing doors and horrific malfunctions, these rare but shocking incidents remind us how thin the line can be between everyday convenience and terrifying tragedy. Here are 5 of the most horrifying deaths that happened inside an elevator. It was supposed to be a dream vacation. Tyler Kerry, just 20 years old, had flown from Essex to Antalya, Turkey, for what would be his first trip abroad with his girlfriend Molly. He was young, energetic, and full of life, a friendly soul devoted to his family. Tyler looked after his younger siblings and worked as an office fitter. He had everything ahead of him. But by the early morning of November 29th, 2024, that dream unraveled into a family's worst nightmare. That night had started like many others on holiday. Laughter, drinks, and the warm buzz of the hotel bar echoing into the early hours. Tyler had dozed off on a sofa nearby, surrounded by people who loved him. Moments later, he was gone, vanished without a sound. Panic set in. His younger brother, 18-year-old Mason Reed, began searching frantically. It was Mason who made the horrifying discovery. His brother's lifeless body at the bottom of an elevator shaft, deep in the hotel basement. Tyler was wearing nothing but boxers and socks. The elevator, police said, had been out of service, but questions began to swirl. How could he have fallen? Why hadn't anyone noticed? Was it truly an accident, or something more sinister? Turkish police were quick to rule out foul play. They said Tyler had been drinking that night at a nightclub and had fallen from the first floor. According to their initial findings, there were no signs of violence, no wounds from weapons, and no evidence of intervention. An autopsy confirmed no external injuries, at least none they considered suspicious. But Tyler's family wasn't convinced. His grandmother, Colette Kerry, called the investigation disgusting. His younger brother, Mason, was adamant. "My brother's been killed, 100%. He described the unbearable pain of waiting, of imagining all the possibilities, all the horrors that might have happened in those lost minutes. "We can't cope just living in the dark," he said. "We need to know now." There were other details, unsettling, unexplained. Tyler's vape, found on the hotel's first floor, appeared to be stained with blood. No one knows how or why. The family said they hadn't even been contacted directly by Turkish authorities. They were left to pick up the pieces and search for answers on their own. As the news spread, support poured in from friends and strangers alike. A GoFundMe page, created by Tyler's great-uncle, raised thousands to cover funeral expenses and launch a private investigation. The family wasn't just grieving, they were fighting for justice. Fighting to make sure Tyler's death wouldn't be dismissed as just another tragic accident abroad. Tyler had been watching a Manchester United game the night before. He'd stayed out a little longer, smiling, laughing, living. No one could have imagined it would be his last night. His girlfriend Molly, who had been so excited for their first trip together, collapsed in tears when she saw his body. "Tyler, get up," she cried, but he never would. It's a story that cuts deep. A young man full of promise, stripped of everything in a moment that still defies explanation. It reminds us how quickly joy can turn to horror, how a simple vacation can spiral into a haunting mystery, and as Tyler's family waits for final autopsy results and continues to demand the truth, one question lingers in the air like a shadow in the hotel hallway. What really happened in that elevator shaft?
Behind me is Shaft 11 of Impala Platinum Mines in Rustenburg, where on Monday afternoon, about 11 workers died at a tragic accident here.
The miners had just finished their shift. Exhausted but alive, they stepped into the steel cage of the elevator, ready to rise from the dark depths of the earth and feel the open air again. For them, it was routine, just another end to another day in one of the deepest and most dangerous professions on the planet. But on November 27th, 2023, something went terribly, irreversibly wrong at the Impala Platinum Mine in Rustenburg, South Africa. As the elevator began its ascent through the 1,000-meter deep shaft, something snapped. Without warning, the lift plummeted, falling hundreds of meters at terrifying speed. In the cold, claustrophobic darkness of that shaft, there was no time to react, no time to scream, no way out. It finally slammed into a platform deep below, an impact so violent that it instantly killed 11 workers and left dozens more critically injured. 2 more miners died later in the hospital, bringing the total to 13 lives lost. 73 others survived, but with shattered bones, ruptured organs, and trauma that would follow them forever. In mining towns across South Africa, the news spread like wildfire. Families waited by their phones, praying their loved ones weren't among the victims. At the mine, ambulances and rescue crews worked frantically, pulling broken bodies from the wreckage. There was blood, screaming, silence, chaos, and above all, a haunting question. How could this happen? Officials say the cause was a malfunction in the lift's winding mechanism, a fault in the very rope meant to carry the cage safely to the surface. Instead of delivering workers to daylight, it became a freefall into horror. Impala Platinum, the company that owns the mine, called it the darkest day in their history. Their CEO, Nico Mueller, expressed heartbreak and vowed support, but for the families of the dead, no words could fill the void left behind. Wives, children, parents, dreams, obliterated in seconds. South Africa's mines are among the deepest in the world. They are vast, dark labyrinths carved into the Earth's crust, filled with danger at every level. For years, unions and watchdog groups have pleaded for stronger safety protocols, but the numbers tell a grim story. This wasn't the first time lives were lost underground, and it won't be the last. Just a month before this tragedy, a gas leak from a mine in Boksburg killed 17 people. And now, 2023's mining death toll has already exceeded the previous year. This wasn't just a technical failure, it was a human failure. A system that allowed men to be carried into the earth with no guarantee they'd make it out again. And when that elevator dropped into the abyss, it didn't just carry miners, it carried the weight of decades of ignored warnings and deferred responsibility. For those who survived, the fall will never end. Every night, every memory, they'll return to that moment. The jolt, the fear, the screams. And for the families of the dead, there's no rising back to the surface. Only questions, grief, and the aching silence left behind when the cage finally stopped falling.
Collapse inside an Atlanta apartment building, claiming the life of a young student athlete.
It started like any ordinary afternoon. Jamarcus McFarland, an 18-year-old athlete with NFL dreams and a heart full of determination, stepped into the elevator at his Atlanta student housing building alongside his teammates. They were headed to football practice just like any other day. Jamarcus had come all the way from Missouri to chase a future through Champion Prep Academy, a second-chance program designed to bridge young athletes into college and beyond. This was supposed to be his launch pad, his shot, but what followed was a horror no one could have imagined. The doors closed behind them. The elevator was crowded. 16 young men crammed into the small space. Laughter, conversations, a tight squeeze but manageable, until the machine shuddered, and then it dropped. Not slowly, not with warning. It collapsed mid-floor between the second and third levels, and Jamarcus was caught in the nightmare. The cab jammed violently, trapping him as he tried to exit. His body was pinned, his legs dangling helplessly toward the floor below. Teammates screamed. One dialed 911. Another tried to pull him out. Everyone watched, powerless, as precious seconds ticked by. For nearly an hour, rescuers worked frantically. Firefighters rushed into the building, forced to climb through the narrow, unstable gap where Jamarcus was stuck. His teammates stood nearby, calling his name, whispering encouragement. "You good, Mac?" one of them repeated over and over. But he wasn't, and deep down, they knew. Atlanta Medical Center was only next door. They got him there quickly, but by the time he arrived, Jamarcus had already slipped beyond saving. His massive 6'6" frame, built for the football field, was no match for the crushing weight of a broken elevator system. He was gone. The grief was instant, and it spread like wildfire. For his teammates, his coaches, and most of all, for his family in Missouri. The boy they sent off with hope and pride would now be coming home in a casket. He was more than just a rising athlete. Jamarcus had a 3.5 GPA in high school. He was prepping for the ACT, aiming to be recruited to a major college in just a few months. The NFL wasn't just a dream, it was a plan. He was kind, humble, and fiercely respected. And now he was a name on a growing list of lives cut short by preventable tragedy. From the moment the news broke, questions followed. How could this happen in a building full of student athletes? Why did an elevator collapse like that, with people still inside? As it turns out, the elevator's state inspection permit had expired more than a year earlier, in August 2020. Official reports revealed it hadn't been inspected as required by law, not once. The responsibility, according to investigators, fell on the building's owners, who never requested a new inspection. Property managers claimed the elevator had been serviced the week before. They blamed the young men inside, saying the combined weight, nearly 4,000 pounds, exceeded the 3,000-pound limit and caused a domino effect. But that explanation fell flat for those who had lived with the elevator daily. It had been malfunctioning for months, they said. Everyone knew it. Everyone feared it. "We knew something like this was going to happen," teammate Bryson Grove told reporters. "We just didn't know it would take one of our own." Surveillance footage later surfaced, captured and reviewed by police body cams. The elevator doors were still open when it started to descend. Panic erupted. A crowd of students scrambled to get out. Some made it. Jamarcus tried and didn't. The grainy footage showed it all. The chaos, the confusion, the desperate last second before he was crushed between floors. The officer watching the footage with building management later sat down, visibly shaken. "Wasn't expecting that," he muttered. Neither was anyone else. Jamarcus's family has now hired attorneys and launched an independent investigation. They want justice, not just for their son, but for every student who steps into a building trusting that it's safe. They're demanding answers, accountability, and change. They know nothing will bring Jamarcus back, but they can make sure no other parent has to live this nightmare. A GoFundMe was created in his honor to help cover funeral costs and bring him home to Missouri. Within days, thousands of people donated. Coaches vowed to dedicate the rest of the season to him. Players wrote his number on their wrists. In the locker room, his absence is a silence that echoes. This wasn't just a freak accident. It was a preventable death. A young man, full of promise, crushed between bureaucracy, negligence, and machinery. One moment he was on his way to practice. The next, the world lost someone irreplaceable. It was just another evening at Lagos Island General Hospital. Dr. Vuere Diaso had only weeks left before completing her housemanship. She had dreams, plans, a future carefully stitched together by years of study and sacrifice. On August 1st, 2023, she stepped into the elevator to collect a food delivery. But then came the crash. A deafening sound ripped through the hospital, metal groaning, concrete shuddering. Doctors nearby froze. One of them, Dr. Moy, had been standing just outside the elevator moments before. Another, climbing the stairs, heard the impact echo through the walls. And in that moment, everyone knew something had gone horribly wrong. The elevator had plummeted, from the 10th floor straight to the ground. Trapped inside was Dr. Diaso, conscious, crying for help. She was alive, broken, bleeding, but alive. The nightmare stretched on as calls were made. First to the elevator maintenance company, then to emergency services. But no one came. No one. For over 40 agonizing minutes, Vuere remained trapped in that wreckage, her body pinned, her voice growing weaker. Time passed like slow poison. Doctors and colleagues scrambled to help, using bare hands and tools to pry open the twisted steel doors. When they finally reached her, what they found was horrifying. Her body was caught between the elevator's base and the concrete of the ground floor. The engine, massive and cold, hung just above her head. Glass shattered around her, limbs shattered. Blood soaked the floor. And then, as they tried to resuscitate her, they realized something unthinkable. There was no blood in the hospital for a transfusion. In a government hospital, in Nigeria's largest city, nothing. Dr. Vuere Diaso died on that floor. Not just from the fall, but from a system that failed her at every turn. It wasn't just an accident. Everyone knew the elevator had been faulty. The doctors had complained for months, even years. Requests had been made. Promises were given. Nothing was done. The grief that followed wasn't quiet. It burned. Her colleagues, friends, and the entire medical community erupted with fury. The Lagos branch of the Nigerian Medical Association declared an indefinite strike across 3 hospitals on the island. They wore black. They mourned for 5 days, and they demanded answers. Her death wasn't just tragic, it was a symbol. A devastating reminder of what happens when warnings are ignored, when life is treated as cheap, when negligence wears the face of silence. The government reacted with statements and committees. A panel was formed. Experts brought in. Investigations promised. But for those who knew Vuere, the ones who worked with her, laughed with her, watched her care for the sick, it was all too late. She had done everything right, studied hard, showed up every day and put patients before herself, and all she got in return was an unkept promise and a faulty elevator. Some said it could have been any of them. Any doctor, any nurse, any visitor. But it was her. Her smile, her future, her voice, now silenced forever in the basement of a building that should have protected her. And still, one question refuses to go away. How many more lives must fall before those responsible are made to rise and face what they've done? It was supposed to be a routine job. Just another day at work in a Bronx apartment building for 25-year-old Joseph Rosa, a newlywed and an apprentice elevator mechanic trying to make a life for himself. On the morning of February 18th, 2021, Joseph entered the elevator shaft of a Mount Eden high-rise alongside a senior technician. He was there to help repair a lift that residents said had been broken for months. No one could have imagined how that morning would end. Joseph stepped into the shaft pit just after 10 a.m., unaware that he had walked straight into a death trap. He was told to secure the counterweight and cut the cable, a task that should have been safe, that should have come with safeguards. But something critical had been removed from the system 2 weeks earlier. The elevator's governor, a vital device designed to trigger the brakes if the cab ever dropped, was gone. The senior mechanic had taken it out to replace it, and when the new one didn't fit, he just moved on. He never reinstalled the old one. No safety backup, no brake, no protection. Even worse, the elevator hadn't been hung. There were no chains to lock the brake system, no procedure to suspend it. So when Joseph sawed through the steel rope, the elevator above him gave way. It came crashing down 6 stories in a blink. No time to move, no time to scream. The full weight of the steel cab crushed him before he even knew what hit him. Residents nearby heard the impact and ran to see what had happened. One man peered down into the shaft. "I saw him," he later told reporters, his voice hollow. He was dead down at the bottom. His body was crushed. Emergency responders pulled Joseph out, racing him to Bronx Lebanon Hospital, but there was no miracle. He was already gone. Joseph Rosa had just started his career. He had just married Karina, the love of his life, only a few months earlier. He was full of dreams, full of plans. A young man with his whole life ahead of him, wiped out by someone else's decision to take a shortcut. His death wasn't an accident. It was a consequence. The man overseeing the job, 67-year-old Peter Malatz, was later charged with criminally negligent homicide. Prosecutors accused him of ignoring every safety rule that might have saved Joseph's life. He hadn't followed basic protocols. He hadn't protected his apprentice. He sent a young man into danger without doing the one thing he was supposed to do, make the site safe. And now a wife is left widowed, a family shattered, friends and co-workers broken with guilt and grief. "He was a big light in all of our lives," Karina said through tears. "The most amazing person I've ever met." But Joseph's story is not an isolated one. Every year, dozens of people die in elevator-related accidents, many of them workers, many of them young, many of them preventable. These machines are unforgiving. One misstep, one missing safeguard, and the consequences are permanent. Joseph had trusted the man above him, trusted that the equipment had been properly secured, trusted that someone, anyone, had checked the system before he stepped in. But that trust was misplaced, and he paid with his life. The weight of that elevator wasn't just physical, it was the weight of negligence, of laziness, of failure. And once it dropped, it took everything with it. Now, as legal proceedings unfold, Joseph's family clings to the hope that someone will be held accountable, that maybe, just maybe, justice can rise from the pit where their son, their husband, their friend was crushed. Because if there's anything worse than a young man dying on the job, it's knowing he didn't have to die at all.